Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, hold on. My kids are like roller
No, that's
skating.
okay. I was like, I had before I came on here, I was like, I had to make sure my roommates know. I was like, please keep noise down to a minimum. Yeah, please.
That's so loud. Okay. What do you do? I think they'll calm down in about 30 seconds.
That's all good. Good. I can hear us. Everything looks good on the YouTube stream. Right. Oh, by the way, real quick, Itachi, did you see at the bottom of the notes what I added? You like it?
I like it.
We'll just switch off. That'll be good. Cool. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Welcome to episode 12 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, dragonrider and Itachi. How's it going?
Good evening or morning, wherever you are, depending on where you are.
Yes. And we are joined this week by our very special, wonderful guest here, FlyingKraken. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you all for having me. I'm really, really excited for this.
Yeah, really excited to have you on. I feel like I've known you for a while. It's been quite a while.
I mean, I think you were one of my first like streamer friends when I first started streaming like 2 years ago.
Yeah. Wait, has it only been 2 years?
He's been
these last couple of years.
Yeah, no, seriously, like this year or this past year came across 2-year anniversary, and I was like, wow, it's been 2 years.
Wow.
I was like a sophomore in college when I started streaming. Wow. Okay.
Dang.
Oh, time flies.
Yeah. And you know, I feel like we talk about this every week. Like the last 2-3 years have time feels so different the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's all felt like one single day. It's been like Blur's Day for 2 years.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Let's kick things off with kind of a little bit about yourself, like a little interview. But can you start with just telling us, like, what's your history with card games, especially? Like, what got you into cards? How long have you been playing cards? You mentioned that you were streaming, so like, can you talk about what else you've done with cards other than just like play them as well?
Yeah, so I started playing card games in a very weird fashion. I played my first game of Magic in a welding class in high school. Like I'm from South Alabama, and so like during the breaks of welding, I didn't really want to like partake in like just country stuff. I guess. And I would go inside the classroom. I would just sit at a desk, and these two guys were like playing Magic, and I grew up liking chess and stuff. So I walked over there, and I was just like, what are you guys doing? We're like, we're playing Magic, and they only played casually. So I didn't start there, but I got there, started going to F&Ms, found out that people actually gather every Friday to play card games, and
well, I mean, it's called Magic the Gathering. No,
yeah, I know. Honestly, like I just forgot about that last part. Well, they just called it Magic for a while, and it's always like, I mean, y'all probably know, like when you like tell someone you play Magic, they're like, oh, like rabbit and flowers,
Yeah.
But no, and then I don't know, Magic kind of took off. I did it professionally for a while, and it ended up paying for like my first years of college. So I don't know. And then after that, I started trying to play all the card games. I just love card games so much, really.
You know what's wild is I tried to play Yu-Gi-Oh professionally, and I did pretty well. It didn't pay for nothing though. Like it was
I mean, honestly, I entered Magic in a very like I guess, lucky timing. It was like 2015, 16, 17, 18. So it was like back when like Magic was offering like, $50K for the big tournaments, and their world championship had like $1 million in it and stuff like that. And even the local 200-man tournaments were giving out like $1,000 over top 8. And so I got to the point. I started like just kind of playing FNMs, and then one of the guys, the older guys, been playing Magic since the beginning, was like, you're kind of good at this. You want to come with us to Atlanta, like 2 hours away, and play in like a professional tournament? And I was like, well, I mean, I'm like 15. I don't really have money to pay for it. And like, we'll pay for your entry fee and everything. The biggest part though was trying to convince my parents to let me go. I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to go play at a convention center in Atlanta, this card game. They're like, what? And then I came back and I was like, hey, Mom, I won $1,000. And they're like, wait, what? And I was like, they're like, you can go as many as you want, son. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Thank you. And since I played that led me into streaming kind of in a way where I took Magic so seriously for a while. I needed I needed a side card game to have like goofy fun with. So that became Hearthstone. And I just started streaming Hearthstone after a while, so.
That's awesome. I didn't know you played Magic competitively, like professionally. Also didn't know you're from South Alabama, because I'm also from South Alabama. Where are you from? What part?
I'm from Enterprise.
Enterprise. I'm from Monroeville.
Monroeville. Yeah, and I currently attend Auburn. I'm in my senior year here, and graduate, I guess.
You could have picked a better.
I see. I knew it was gonna come up. But yeah, I mean, it was a really, really like weird time, because I like that first competitive tournament I entered. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna play. I don't really know what I'm doing, and then I was like 10-0, and I was like, oh, and then I lost 2 in a row, and I was like 10-2, and I was like, oh, and I came back, and I had one more match left, and they were back. The people were like, grab my shoulders, like, just relax, you're gonna be all right. If you win this next match, you make top 8. And I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, who's my opponent? Ross Merriam. Okay, that's a top 20 player in the world.
Yep.
Okay, and then they're like, I sat down. I'm like, okay, you ready to play? And he's like, oh, we're gonna be on camera. And I'm like, Twitch? And he's like, yeah, Twitch. You ever done this before? And I'm like, no.
Oh man.
And then I ended up making YouTube from that match a little bit. So it was all fun. But yeah, Magic was really, really fun. And all that kind of stuff.
What?
Did
You
you
just leave
win
us
the
hanging?
match?
Did you win?
I did not. No,
Okay. All right.
So I won the first match in top 8, and then I got the top 4 and lost to a mulligan to 4. Like it was actually a matchup I was very favored in, like 80-20 in my favor, and I just mulled the 4 both matches in a row, and just had to concede at that point. But learned a lot from that, and I mean, on from there, and I didn't really see it as a career, but like, I mean, when I graduated high school, I was like, my parents were like, you want to go to college? And I'm like, yeah, I would like to, be an engineer and all that kind of stuff. And if I was like, I'm really good at this Magic thing, and they were like, well, if you want to take a couple of years and see how far you can go with this, and save that money for college or whatever you can. And I ended up for like 2 years in a row, made a okay amount of money. I mean, at the end of my first year playing Magic, my mom says, you got something in the mail. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, it's a tax form. And I'm like, I got to pay taxes? And they're like, yeah, you made money, you got to pay taxes. I'm like, oh, okay. So, but yeah.
Wow. When I played my first, like traveled for my first event, I was also really young. And I just told my mom, like, hey, I'm going to Atlanta for the weekend. And she's like, okay. And I did terrible. I was not prepared for that level of competition at that age. Yeah, not the same.
I mean, it's scary, because you walk into a convention center, there's 3,000 people there.
Yeah.
You're in a tournament of probably a lot of those like Star City game tournaments were like 1,000 people or more in one tournament, and and crap. I mean, when you sit down, there's a lot of people who've been playing a lot longer than you have, and in person it can get kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt a lot of nerves. I still, even today, like if I go to a tournament and when I sit down for like round one or whatever, I have those, I guess I call them round one jitters where you just, you never know.
Hey, I
It
almost
just,
like to lose like round 1 or 2. Like I almost would just like to lose one of the first 2 rounds, just be like, get it out of the way, just get the jitters out of the way.
oh,
But
if I win round one, I feel like I'm gonna win the event. If I lose round one, I feel like crap. Like I
mm,
lost round one. I do this
so,
bad thing that I shouldn't do where I refer to people who I think are have a lot to learn still in the game. I call them round one opponents because like
well, round 1 is so crazy because you either get somebody who is like following the meta like you are, or you get somebody who has brought like a tier 6 jank deck that like you just
exactly.
like your sideboard is not prepared for. You did not spend any time preparing for this and just beat you. And
There's no in between.
you're just like, yeah. So, hey guys, what are the side events for this tournament? Like,
Exactly. So that was my experience. And the first time I qualified for like anything related to Hearthstone was the Winter Championships in 2019. And so
yeah.
I sit down for my first round, or where this is a LAN at the time, it's still a LAN. And I'm playing against Hot Meowth. I don't know if you remember Hot Meowth, but he was like a
Mhm.
really, really good player, like a high level player at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, like somebody's so good already round one. And then I 3-0'd him like quickly. And I was like, what? Is this how the day is
I
going to be? And
mean,
then I promptly proceeded to lose against like Dear Jason and I think Language Hacker and some
wow,
other really
yeah.
good people. Every person I played had a golden card back. And this was like, I didn't have a super account. You just had your regular account for this event. And so like these were their golden card backs. They weren't like borrowing, they
Oh
weren't
wow,
borrowing
yeah.
these.
Oh no. I feel like in Hearthstone, sometimes you like when you start doing like the battle fight tournaments and stuff. I feel like you come across like a lot of the bigger names way easier than you do in other card games
For
sometimes.
sure.
Yeah, you come to them, you're like you get. I was like, oh crap, I know this person, But I don't know. I always went about it like just try to treat them like a normal, treat them just like they're a human being just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. Their cards don't do anything different than mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good mindset. Like go, we were kind of talking about it before we started recording, how it seems like some games are kind of starting, and I think we'll definitely talk about that a little bit more later. But like some of these games are really kind of starting to kick back up their competitive scenes. LAN events for a lot of these card games are kind of coming back. I think even the Magic World Championship that just happened, pretty recently, was in person again. Like I guess the last couple of years it wasn't. Things are starting to come back up, and a lot of those card games are also starting to have like their kind of lead up tournaments, right? Their locals and that kind of stuff. So that's definitely a good thing to remember for anybody that might be starting up those like in person tournaments, or
Yeah.
if you've never been to one, just if you feel nervous, like pretty much everybody there is is
Yeah.
nervous or is at least nervous at some
Mhm.
point during the tournament. So they're all like Kraken said, everybody's just a person like you are. It's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, they're playing with, same cards and the same meta as you. And, most of the time card games are won through certain patterns of outcomes and you just play your game. That's a lot of times.
Hmm.
I'm super excited that card games are getting back to competitive again. I was getting scared there for a little bit. I'm ready to get back into it too. Cause I mean, for a while it didn't, it really seemed like competitive card games were just like falling off a hill and you didn't know what was going to happen with all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, you've mentioned how you've done a lot of competitive and you mentioned kind of streaming. Can you just tell us like real quick, like, what else have you done besides that, or do you have something that you're kind of working on or aiming for now? I know you've kind of
Um,
switched over to some Pokemon stuff, but can you talk to us about like what
yeah,
you're
yeah. So
kind of going on?
yeah, so I still do play Hearthstone and all the card games and stuff like that. But during my senior year of school, I'm kind of just taking a little hiatus from doing it competitively. But like you mentioned, I do stream like VGC competitive online Pokemon, and I am the owner of something called PML, the Pokemon Masters League, which is basically like fantasy football for Pokemon. It is a league of usually 10 to 16 teams. You know, we all have our names, like I'm the Auburn Agrons and all that kind of stuff. We draft Pokemon at the beginning of the season. We have a 16-week season, playoffs, and all that kind of stuff. And that takes up a lot of my time these days because I have to do like all the Excel sheets and all the prepping and planning for all the teams. And, you know, if teams can't meet up on a certain time for the stream, I gotta, you know how it is with, you know, managing a kind of a brand, I guess, you know.
Yep.
It's a lot of work.
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I can't imagine trying to do that and balance being in college. Like I don't know how you're doing it.
Yeah, I very carefully, I guess. Oh, but yeah, Pokemon is main focus right now, and it's a lot of fun. It really is. And I know it's not card games, but competitive Pokemon is way more complex than I ever thought it was when I first got into it. And you know, because I played Pokemon my entire life, just casually. You know, okay, this Pokemon learns 4 moves. They all attack and they all do things. You know, and then and then my friend Knotted Squirrel got me into doing competitive Pokemon, and he was like, yeah, dude, it's like more than that. It's math and stats and predicting and all that kind of stuff. And me being an engineer major, I was just like, ooh, I love stats, you know, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. And a lot of it carries over from card games as more than I would thought of, you know.
I was just thinking that too, like the amount of math and like stats and odds that you have to think about, like, okay, what are my odds to draw a certain card from my deck that's left, or, you know, calculating certain amounts of damage or things like that. It's like, if you had asked me like a couple of years ago or before I really got into card games, I'd have been like, oh, whatever, like it's just cards, you just play things. But like after actually playing them more and really trying to take them seriously and be competitive, it's like there's a lot of like math and odds.
It's overwhelming, and you know, you don't really have to. Sometimes you don't have to learn all the super specifics. Like when I entered my stats classes in college, you know, the first problem you learn when you enter stats in college is if you draw this card from a deck, what's your chances of drawing another card from a deck? And I'm just like, ooh, I can answer this.
This one.
Yeah. And so I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of math in it too, and card games, a lot of predicting and a lot of mind games. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Right. Itachi, got anything you want to ask him?
No, so I really wanted to like, I wanted to know where Kraken was from, because like sharing a place. Alabama's my home. I don't stay there anymore, but it's still my home. And then I'm so sad to find out that he goes to Auburn. I know that like you might not know, Don, but Auburn is like my school's blood and nemesis. Yeah, like we don't
like
what year you're in your senior year?
I am in my senior year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, I'm really deep into sports. I'm a big sports guy. I'm a sports writer. I see, because when I entered college, I knew that my whole 4 years in college would be based around math. Well, I had to find something that was not math based, so I became a kind of like a journalist. And so I joined like the local like paper and the sports section, and I was like, I want to meet all the coaches and meet all the players and all that kind of stuff. And
for sure,
yeah, it became my hobby basically outside of school and cards, I guess, because cards was also math, so it wasn't really helping.
Yeah. You never got away from math, and then you decided I'm gonna meet a new head coach every single year. Anyway,
I'm very happy to find out that you're from Alabama. That's really it's really cool. I'm really shocked I didn't know that, honestly. So that's really cool.
Aside from the guy that got me into, a friend of mine that got me into Hearthstone, I don't know a single other Hearthstone player in Alabama. I don't know not one.
I tried to start a team because Auburn has an esports like team thing, and they have like nationally ranked like League of Legends and Overwatch and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, what about Hearthstone? And they're like, if you can find enough people to play. And I was like, oh, okay, well.
You just get like 3 guys and you just carry. Like they don't even.
Yeah.
well, card games are a little bit harder in Alabama. I mean, Dragon, I don't know if you know, but like Alabama can't have big card game tournaments. We can only have medium-sized ones because Alabama's laws dictate it as gambling.
Yep.
So all our big card game tournaments and stuff like that have to be held outside of the state. And so, like, I guess it's just not as popular in a lot of places here. But
good old Alabama.
But hey, one of the most winningest Magic players is from Alabama of all time. So I guess it counts. Todd Anderson.
Oh, Todd.
Yeah, Todd Anderson's from Homewood.
That is true. Mm-hmm. You know who else is from? I don't know if you know him, but Chiho Yim is also a very winning Magic player from Alabama. I practiced with him when I tried to play the game as well. He taught me a lot. So that was something interesting.
I think we actually topped at a tournament together one time. I believe so. I think me and Choi in. I think it was an Atlanta event. It was a long time ago. It was like 2017 or 16, I think. Because every time I meet someone from Alabama, I'd be like, "Oh, you're from Alabama."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he topped a lot back then, so I could see that having happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but no, I don't have anything other. I know I usually have some extra questions, but he kind of answered them all, so that was awesome.
Oh, well, I probably rambled too much. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's perfect. It's just perfect.
Good. Awesome. Well, we will have links to find more from Kraken in the YouTube description or the show notes for audio listeners. And of course, we'll plug those a bit later in the show. But you know what we do finally have after what feels like a complete drought? We actually have quite a bit of news now that the holidays are over. We're kind of a little bit into the new year now. People are ramping back up with, putting out content and news and stuff. So we'll kind of rapid fire through these. Have mentioned the last couple of weeks. Eternal has an expansion coming out pretty soon. I think that's next week, January 18th. Behemoths of Thera. I left it as is, so I'm not messing it up this week. Behemoths of Thera. The Pokemon TCG has Crown Zenith coming out on January 20th. That's also next week. Today, I actually saw Smite. If anybody's heard of the game Smite, made a post. We've got that linked to Twitter post. Looks like they are doing, I don't know exactly, but working with Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast on Magic. I don't know exactly what that means, what it all is, but something's happening between the two. So that was kind of interesting there. Quite a bit of things going on for Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap Battle Mode is going to be releasing very soon, so people can actually play versus friends. That's pretty much also going to mean that people are going to be setting up tournaments and stuff with that. They also released their first patch of 2023. That came out on, I think that came out January 10th. They changed to 9 cards. They did a lot of bug fixes, all sorts of stuff in there, included artist information for card arts. So you can actually find out who the artists are for different pieces in the game that you like. And then they also announced their first, what they're calling series drop, in which cards will drop from one series into a lower series so that people can, get those cards a little bit easier. We'll have a link for those patch notes if you want to check those out. And then they did kind of say on Twitter as well that first series drop is going to be happening on January 31st. 5 Series 5 cards are going to be going into Series 4. And then 4 Series 4 cards going to be dropping into Series 3. But my indication with them saying first series drop is that means that they're intending to do more than those or keep that going. So that seems good.
I'll wait till we get to the end of news, and then I'll come back to that, to the things in the news that I want to put a note on.
Okay, perfect. All right. Then we have the Hearthstone Battlegrounds Season 3 was announced. That is coming out next week on Tuesday, January 17th. It's bringing a new minion type, Undead, into Battlegrounds. A whole sort of, a bunch of new minions, bringing back Hero, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure that they'll probably be adding in some new mechanic the last several like seasons, they've kind of done some sort of new mechanic with that. So we'll have the link for that as well. We've got the Flesh and Blood next standalone set was also announced, called Outsiders. They are going to be having a mix of returning and new heroes that will be included in the set. And they are introducing what they're calling hybrid cards, which are cards that can be played by two different classes. I think in relation to this would be like dual class or wow, what was in Hearthstone way back? They had the triple class cards.
Oh, the Cabal and like all those.
Yeah. Or, basically like a multicolored card in something like Magic. It's essentially that same thing, but for Flesh and Blood. The card reveals, they said, will be beginning on March 4th. The pre-release is going to be March 17th through 20th. And then the set will actually release on March 24th. So that's like a full month out, like still from now, like before they even have the pre-releases, or 2 months. So quite a ways out ahead of time that they are announcing this, but kind of get everybody excited for that. And then this last bullet point, I totally put in the wrong section. So we'll talk about that in competitive. Okay, Itachi. All right, hit us with your thoughts there.
Okay, so the drop is cool, going from 5 to 4 and 4 to 3, and then they add the first edition badge. I don't know if you saw that, but if you got the card when it was a Series 5 card, and then it drops, you get what's called a first edition badge. So it basically says that you overpaid for this card, but but I think so. I saw some notes from Ben Bro that was talking about changing up the amount of collector's tokens from your collector's caches, and I think that's a huge and much needed change, especially if a Series 5 card is going to cost 6,000 collector's tokens. Because what that says is that you'll only ever access this card if you played the game in beta and if you've played the game extensively. And I think that the whole, like, if you played in beta, then your collection and your collection level translated over kind of sucks. Because, like, everyone wanted to play beta, but not everyone got access to, right? Like, I wanted to play beta, but I didn't get access to. But if I had gotten access, if I was one of the lucky ones, quote unquote, then I would have had, all these collector's tokens that they gave out to the people who had really high collection levels. Instead, I got enough to get like one Series 4 card or Series 3 card, like 1,000 tokens essentially. And now you get 100 per box. So having cards that cost 6,000 collector's tokens with no tangible way to get to those at a reasonable time seems kind of iffy. The one time that they did include them, it was at a bundle, and the bundle it cost gold, which you can earn in game, but the equivalent of buying that gold in the shop was like $100, and that was just absurd. Like, that's an absurd amount to access a card, to access one single card. So if you like, Galactus is one of the highest performing cards in the game, and Galactus also is not moving from Series 5 to Series 4. Galactus and Thanos, those two are not moving. So there's still going to be 6,000 collector's tokens. For one of the best cards in the game, you essentially would have to spend $200, because the bundle that I was previously talking about that got you all those collector's tokens only got you 3,000. So it only got you half of enough to get access to a Galactus. So that's pretty disappointing. And at the level that I'm at, I'm currently like seeing some Galactus players. So that just kind of sucks,
And I just started Marvel Snap like a week or two ago. Like, so that kind of like, it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. It's rough. So the thing about it is, when you're in Series 1, Pool 1, and Series 2, Pool 2, those are the best, like, in terms of introductory. They're really good to be in, because those people don't have Series 3 cards either. They don't have Series 6 cards or Series 5 cards. But once you get like in the middle, kind of in that middle of, you've gotten into Collection 3 and then you're kind of middling about, then it gets a little rough, because there are a lot of those cards that like really aren't great, and then there's a lot of those cards that really are great, but you need multiple of them. So if you're not like getting the right synergies, then you have like pieces of decks that you can't quite play against people who have gotten like the full deck by luck of the draw or by collector's tokens, getting the one or two cards they needed by chance. So it can be a little frustrating, but I still find myself in a pretty good position most times. Like I still feel like I win a fair amount of my games. I still feel like I have fun. I don't take many losses based on the fact that I just didn't have the cards. But also, I want to play the game. Like I want the decks that look fun. When I see a new deck pop up, I'm like, oh, I want to play that. But then, you realize that you just can't, and there's no way to really get there. So that's the sucky part that I deal with. But as far as their patch notes and their fixes, they were pretty good. They did good nerfs. The cards that they nerfed deserve to get nerfed. I do think that they should. How do you compensate, right? Like if you nerf Galactus, it's a 6,000 token card, like I talked about, and somebody bought a bundle that did not include Galactus in order to get the tokens to get him, right? You're not going to get refunded for that. So what do you do? Like there has been no mention of compensation at all. So that also sucks. That if you could potentially spend money and then the card to get a card, and then the card that you want get nerfed, but because you had to circumvent the system to get that card, there's no like restitution for you. So that kind of sucks. That was a lot. I talked a lot, yeah. So you're gonna have to live.
You're fine. I was learning. Like I've been sitting here this whole time. Like I don't even know when I'm what pool 1, 2, 3. I was like,
I didn't either. And that was the beauty of it. But like once you figure it out, it gives you so much insight on like deck building and what to do and what to look for and what you're waiting on, and then you hit a card and you're like, oh, I can build that deck now. And so it's pretty cool.
I think Marvel Snap brings a very like unique issue when it comes to like nerfing cards, because you unlock cards by getting the certain rank or whatever. It's not like you're crafting the card or getting it from a pack or anything. So you really worked your way to get to there. And if they nerf it, then you're like, well, I either spent a lot of money or I spent a lot of time, so
yeah. Especially the Series 3 and beyond cards, because Series 1 and Series 2 are such small and finite pools that in the first couple of weeks, like a week or two, you'll get through all of those cards. You'll see them all. Or maybe in the first month, I would say you'll probably be through all of pool 2. But after that, pool 3 is so large, and the rate at which you get cards is every 3 chests, which is I think a little like 12 collection levels, which is a lot at that level. Like you have to play a reasonable amount, or you have to quickly upgrade your cards, which means you spend a lot of not tokens, you spend a lot of credits. If you spend a lot of credits and you run out and you need more, you can buy credits, right? So it's like they've got this really great model in terms of creating income and like cash flow, but it doesn't really support the person who is doing the playing and purchasing. So I don't see too much of a reason currently to buy a bundle or any of the bundles that they've offered. They've all been way too expensive. I think the lowest one was $20 and it still didn't seem worth it. Now they did introduce one for $5, or I saw a leak of one that was $5 and it looked like it was pretty good value. But other than that, they've seemed really, really lackluster.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that for sure I've seen a lot of discussion on is just the monetization and like collection aspect of the game. That it's it's really difficult. And I feel like we talked about that one of the weeks was kind of that difference, because I think in other card games it is not unreasonable at all for one specific card to be $200, $300 or more dollars, right, in physical games. But then you start getting into that, well, this isn't a physical game. You don't actually physically get the cards. And, there's this whole other discussion with it. And it's like, I don't know, pricing these kind of things is just like, it feels out of control, I feel like, for both physical and digital card games. I think that's one of the things that I feel like I see most often in discussions, is how often things are being released and how much the cost is of the things that are being released. And it's just like for a lot of the card games, not just Marvel Snap. And it's like, whoa, this is getting intense.
Yu-Gi-Oh ended up in a similar scenario, and they brilliantly created a solution to it, albeit over a decade later. But nevertheless, there was a card. This has happened twice in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. In the very early part of like their competitive scene, we had what was called a Shonen Jump Championship, where the magazine Shonen Jump had their runnings of their championship series. Konami eventually took it over, and that's what's now called a YCS, or Yu-Gi-Oh Championship Series. So in the early Shonen Jump, there was a prize card that you got for winning a Shonen Jump. You had to be the winner to get this card. It was called Crush Card Virus. That card was broken. It was absurd. It gave you a very distinct advantage if you had the card and your opponent did not. So starting from the very first Shonen Jump winner, the people who won had a stacked advantage in further events. So obviously this card got very expensive because it was a prize card. It's already super hard to obtain. B, it's a very, very good game defining card. Like, can you imagine if Patches the Pirate was only available to people who had won the Masters Tour? Like, that would be absurd. That would have been absurd. So that's what that's what happened there. And like, to obtain this card, it was super difficult, and you just couldn't do it. So you were at a disadvantage if you played someone who had it. Fast forward years later, it's now called a YCS, a Yu-Gi-Oh Championship Series, and they release an extra deck monster called Minerva. Lightsworn something. It's a Lightsworn monster. It's part of a special archetype. The card was extremely good. It was a very versatile kind of neutral card that you could play in a bunch of different decks, and it was very, very good. However, you didn't have to win the championship series to get it. You had to win to get the ultra rare, and you had the top 4 or top 3 actually. Only second and third place got a super rare copy. So there were 3 copies given per championship event. Well, my friend played a deck that needed that card to function. He paid $1,000 for that card. But if you had that card today in good condition, you could probably fetch, if you had the ultra rare first place version, you could fetch $15,000 or more. If you had the super rare version currently today that my friend paid $1,000 for back then, you probably get $7,000 or $8,000 because you held on to it and it retained value because it was a physical possession. Galactus in 2 years ain't gonna give me a damn thing. I will have nothing to show for the fact that I paid $200 to get enough tokens to get a Galactus. And so that just, to me, that makes me feel really bad to purchase anything.
Yeah, Magic had a similar situation. They tried doing this thing like it was like 2016. They wanted to do this thing where if you bought like a booster box of the newest set or whatever, they give you a promo card, and it was a card that wasn't actually in the set but had the set symbol on it. And the problem is that card shops, depending on how big the location of your card shop was, they would give you like 1, 2, or 3 packet of these cards. So past that packet, you didn't have any more copies of the card. Well, the card ended up being game defining, and was a 4 of in the top 2 decks, I believe. And so they ended up having to pass a rule where like it was the only card, it was the first card in Magic's history that you could allow the proxy. Like you had to write on a piece of paper, this is that card. You were allowed to only for that card because it was unavailable. Basically, there was a limited amount printed, and it's
wow.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing. They're worth a little bit of money now, but like Galactus, I don't, want to spend $100 on a digital card that I'm just not going to use. Maybe here in a year. I don't know.
Or in 3 months, or like now it's nerfed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That was one of the 9 cards.
Nexus of Fate.
I didn't know that.
Nexus of Fate was only a box topper. And I remember I worked at a card shop, and I was in a little bitty town of only 20,000 people in that town, and they handed, and like, well, your card shop's not that big, so they handed us like all the booster boxes that people pre-ordered, and like, here's your pack of 20 copies of this card. Well, I mean, we sold more than 20 booster boxes, and we didn't have enough of them to give out, and that's 1 per box, and the card was 4 per deck. So yeah, it was a problem, and it drove the price of that card to like $100 and something bucks a piece or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that was only a box topper. I thought that came from a set, and it was just like a really expensive card because it was really good.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people applying multiple copies in decks, Itachi, can you take us through our competitive and organized play?
Yeah. So Flesh and Blood has announced Pro Tour number 3, taking place April 27th through 30th. That's going to be in Baltimore. They'll have both Classic Constructed and Outsiders Booster Draft, 200K prize pool, side events, all the fixings, ketchup, mustard, whatever you like. Saturday and Sunday will also be a calling event, like we were talking about, where it's Classic Constructed and it's open invitation to anyone. It's going to have a 30K prize pool, so that's just like an open series, non-invitational. And then Sunday is going to be the Battle Hardened Blitz Constructed event. It's going to have a 2K prize pool, so a little bit smaller side event. So if you suck twice, then you can play the third one, and then maybe you can still try to recoup some of your trip cost. Battle Spirits Saga published and updated its comprehensive rule set January 9th, confirming a 10-card sideboard for decks, and we'll have a best of 3 format. So they're doing what card games do and creating a format where you have a sideboard, and you can adjust your games in between games for different strategies. Because the best of one is just like a best of one is pretty oppressive, I will say. Like if you imagine, like ladder currently in Hearthstone is a best of one. Could you imagine playing a tournament where it's just like ladder games? Like that would be wild. No way. And then One Piece TCG announced Championship 2023. The path, or they kind of released like a roadmap with the competition running from March of this year to January of next year. And I assume that they're going to have a Worlds after that. I think it's going to be next year for this 2023 competitive year. I think it's going to be Worlds 2024. So One Piece TCG is kind of taking off, though. I've seen a lot of people playing it. I can't even get my hands. I just want a couple of packs of the cards just to have them. I just want to open a couple because they look cool. I can't even find them near me. They're all sold out everywhere around me. We are still in the Hearthstone 2023 competitive news waiting room. Announcement of an announcement of an announcement. Then we get an announcement of an announcement, and then we've been stagnant since then. So all we know is that January ladder will count for competitive ladder, and January ladder will count for the competitive landscape that they're coming up with for Standard and Battlegrounds, and it will be top 100 in both, with the higher you place being more relevant to whatever you might be earning, probably a series of points or something to that effect. In Pokemon Orlando Regionals is going to be February 4th and 5th. That'll be TCG, VGC, and Pokemon Go. I have recently looked into VGC and been learning about the game. I don't know. I don't want it to seem like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about at all, but it's very fun. And I played a lot of Showdown, and I win very few games, and I keep those replays because I was proud that I won. I did predict that Murkrow Haze into my Dendozo, so
I have played through some of the story of Pokemon Violet.
Oh,
hey,
That's like as far as I've gotten.
I will say though, Pokemon Violet had a very, very good story. Scarlet Violet had a very good and interesting story. I was like, actually, for the very first time, I read the text that popped up in the boxes.
Yeah, it's the most effort I've seen in a Pokemon game story-wise, with character development, personalities, and everything since probably what, like, I mean, I want to say Pokemon Coliseum and XD Yellow Darkness, but I mean, yeah. I don't know.
I can't tell you. I've played most of the Pokemon like base series games since like Red and Blue, right? Mm-hmm. I can't tell you what a single character's story is aside from like Gary Oak and Professor Oak. Other than that, I don't know anybody. I don't know any other characters. But this game, they really invested a lot into like the story.
Yeah.
The ending was cool. It was very cool.
One of the storylines almost made me shed a tear over
pets. Same. Very nice little twist at the end, something that I wasn't expecting. But then you figure it out halfway through, and then you go, nah. And then it's revealed, and then you're like, oh. So it was a good playthrough. I really enjoyed the playthrough. I'm currently trying to build a team, farming Cinder Ace raids so that I can power up my guys. And I think that's it for competitive news. Yu-Gi-Oh! YCS, is it Las Vegas? Yes, Las Vegas is happening February 20th through the 21st, I think is the dates. Third weekend in February. So that'll be the next YCS Championship Series. Can't wait for that one. And there will be, I think, a new set for Yu-Gi-Oh! Launches right before or right after that event. I'm not sure which one. Also, YCS Sydney just passed. Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Australia just passed with Jesse Cotton winning again. This guy is like probably the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh! Player of all time at this point. I think he's won 6 events. It's ridiculous. He's really good. It's hard to win one, let alone 6. So he seems unstoppable. So yeah, that is the competitive and organized play landscape for this week. I'm sure that we'll continue to harp on some of these things as these events come up. I know that we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth. Dawn, how far are you from Baltimore?
Quite a ways.
Quite a ways. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in Mountain Time, so that means you're that way, and Maryland is that way.
I'm not close to anything. You kidding me? I'm like right in the middle of the country, like far away from everything. All the big stuff happens on the coasts. Yeah.
What part? Where do you stay again? What state?
I typically don't share that.
Okay, you don't.
Yeah.
I just know that I know, and I have an idea of where it's at. I know it ain't near.
It's a state in the mountain region that doesn't have a lot of people.
That makes sense. I know exactly.
We're just like out in the nowhere. There's like nobody here. I don't know. And then like it's terrible. It's so far away from everything. And then I'm sad and I look at all these events and I'm like, oh, that's
like
12 to 16 hour drive one way.
Wow.
Yeah, those I can do that. No.
That's lightweight. I mean, you can make that drive.
Well, okay. I love driving and I do love road trips and I do tend to drive, especially because it's like way, way cheaper than flying. But also when I have to plan for, an extra couple of days of travel because of the amount of time it takes to drive, it's like some of these events, I'm like, that would be like a 5-day trip just to go, play for like 2 days for a
day. You have to separate just 2 days for driving, and then it's usually like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. So like it is 5 days for sure. And then you gotta have the extra day when you get back to like reset. So it's like another day. So it's like 6 days.
Yeah.
And then you need a day before to pack. So it's really like 7. You might as well just take a week.
I know. And, and then it's like, well, am I going to be trying to actually play multiple? I mean, again, we're still waiting for freaking Hearthstone news. Like, come on. But, if they start lands up again, potentially, I'm like, I'm really going to have to be picky and choosy on like which events I'm going to be able to go to because I'm not going to be able to go to events for 3 different card games. Like, it's not going to happen.
Sure.
Hearthstone land sounds fun.
Yeah,
it is very fun. I will say it is very fun. It's different. It's certainly a different environment. I certainly like being able to see my opponent, like sitting directly across from them is fantastic. That was my one gripe about Hearthstone Winter Championships was that it was a LAN event, except you went to the LAN and you were just in a room of people who were also on computers. You weren't like sitting across from your opponent. It was just like you playing at home, but you were just in another place. Like, and then there were 2 separate. So like on both sides of the country, the same event was happening. So like I had opponents that weren't even in the same room with me. And it was just like, well, what was the point? Why are we here?
I want it to be like the VGC World Championships where like you're sitting at the same table holding like your device, just like staring at your opponent, looking up, looking back down at the game. And I want to see the fear in their eyes. I
want to see him scared. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to see him terrified when he draws patches.
Yeah.
Because I will say this. I've noticed that Hearthstone players have gotten so lax and so used to being like on camera and in the comfort of their own home. They have no idea how to hold their emotions in when bad shit happens. No idea. They also don't know how to hold their emotions in when good shit happens. So they're just like an emotive disaster of a human being when they're playing. And that does not translate into a LAN event. And I feel like they would get exploited.
That's what have a poker face is what you're saying.
I mean, emotions come out in real life events. There's so many like real life Magic tournaments I've been to where people have just had rage fits and just so many.
I mean, like if you have a chance and you like draw a card and you know that you're not dying the next turn, if you like fist bang or like fuck, or you have that rolled eye look, or you're just like out of it, I can see it. I'm like, oh, I probably wasn't gonna go for the kill, but since you did all that, I really feel like I can probably just kill you now. Like I don't, whatever your
Yeah.
back row is or whatever your hand is, it's doing nothing. That secret's nothing. But yeah, so that'll take us into our roundtable topic of the week, which is a very interesting topic. New card games launching and the push of the competitive card games that exist. Also, the push of the new games trying to get into a competitive landscape. Kind of like what are the challenges of new card games coming out this year? And I guess I'll start off by saying that I think it's a perfect time for a brand new card game to introduce themselves and also introduce a competitive scene, because everyone's been at home or playing online events and everyone's itching for a personal or an in-person or local area network or LAN event. And so like the first card game that does that and does it well will get a fan base that latches on just for the sake of traveling if they can make it like memorable. So I think that like Spirits Saga, Flesh and Blood, One Piece, all of those card games that are releasing are going to have to battle with the prestige of a Pokemon or Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh event, where people feel like they're doing something that they're being glorified in. Because if like you win a Pro Tour, or you win a Pokemon regional, or you win a Yu-Gi-Oh championship series, it is a prestigious happening. But if you go to Worlds for Eternal, no shade to people who play Eternal, no one cares, because Eternal hasn't created the prestige around the event, I don't feel. So I think if somebody does that, like if one of these games does that and does it correctly, they'll really position themselves well going forward, because people will latch on because they're just so ready to get out and play a game sitting across from another person.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned Eternal. I think Eternal and some of the other card games kind of have that problem where there is that kind of prestige, but in a very like limited, like the people who play the game, it's prestigious to them, but it's not well known. It's not widespread like Pokemon and Magic, for example. I mean, even Hearthstone is like worldwide, but even the competitive scene for Hearthstone, is still like such a small fraction of the players, and even the views that it gets, or even the turnouts, like when there were in-person events. So it's like I do feel like, and again, it's probably the same for Magic and Pokemon, compared to the vast people who do play the game overall compared to the people who do competitively. But those tournaments are huge. And I don't know if we mentioned this during the show or if we were talking about beforehand, but you mentioned for the competitive stuff, that Pokemon Orlando's regional, right? It's TCG, VGC, and Pokemon Go. The Flesh and Blood, and Kraken was saying that Magic used to do it. They're making like a whole weekend out of these things. Like they make these things a big deal, right? So it's not just like, oh yeah, cool, like this is the like one little tournament that people qualified for. Like, no, it's a whole event. It's a whole like basically it's a convention for that game,
exactly.
multiple events. So like they make it a big deal. And I think I completely agree with you. I think some of these card games that are coming out, Spirits Saga, Disney Lorcana, going to be coming out later this year in fall. And Disney has that kind of prestige, right? Like that name, that recognition of the Disney brand, and those characters. So if they can bring that card game recognition into that same like prestige of the brand recognition of Disney and do it well, it definitely can take off.
All right, hear me out. Imagine winning Disney Lorcana Worlds, right? And then being in like any Disney movie, even as like a side, like it's playing in the background where one of the characters is watching like you win Worlds. Is that not like, that's a very Disney thing to do, and that's very like, that's something that you can show your kids. That's something that, imagine the stories as an old person, like oh, you remember in Finding Nemo, the little kid with the braces was watching me win worlds. Like that would be so crazy.
Disney has like so many unique things they can do as prizes. I mean, one of their tournaments is going to give people tickets to Disney World. Like you
Yeah,
know that's
you're
going to
gonna
be a
get
thing.
tickets to Disney World.
But
I would love to be in the Avengers Kang Dynasty. Would
I mean, game has so much potential because they not only are like it's Disney, everybody knows all the characters, but like they hired one of the art people from Pokemon, they hired somebody from like Wizards, they hired like people from like all the card games to like work on this. And I think card games going into this year that have like a stable base in something that already exists, like newer card games that are selling a ton, like Digimon is still selling a ton because people
yeah.
still know Digimon. One Piece is sold out everywhere because it's the best selling comic slash manga in the world, and
Yep.
it's one of the most popular animes of all time. So, all that kind of stuff. My only worry is for like you said, card games that don't really have a foundation in something else, where they're just kind of just this new thing by themselves. People don't know it; they have to research it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a good year for new card games. A lot of the older card games like Magic and Pokemon and stuff are kind of like having to restart their competitive scene because of COVID. So if you want to start fresh and
Mhm.
compete one on one with Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, you can start now.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I don't feel like that was very much of an option before COVID. I felt like it was very stranglehold bottlenecked on the scene. You know.
Do you feel like there was a different like barrier to entry?
Yeah, well, I feel like if you try to start a card game before COVID, where like Magic had like all these big tournaments, and Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon had their big tournaments and all that kind of stuff, and even in foreign countries, the games like Card Fight Vanguard, that has its own anime. You try to create a new card game, well, the whole scene was just like bottleneck stranglehold through all the big companies. And since basically all the big companies have kind of reduced the amount of like competition and tournaments for the past like three years, everybody can start new.
Mhm.
And it's a good time to start a new card game right now. I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also think that one of the things that has happened that was completely different is that s- so because of COVID, every card game that wanted to keep existing had to make a way for the game to exist online,
Mhm.
whether it was putting tournaments online, making an online simulator, ramping up whatever online simulator they had. We saw Magic release Arena, which did that come out in 2020 or was it? It was 2020, right?
So
Late
yeah,
2020 or 2021.
yeah, I was like
Right.
2020, I think.
So
Yeah.
they immediate response was we got to get something online because people are at home. Yu-Gi-Oh came out with Duel Links and kept updating Duel Links throughout the COVID pandemic, and they also released Master Duel.
Mhm.
Pokemon they ramped up their TCG online,
Mhm.
and then they tried to get the new online system out. Like it just came out, but it took forever. But everybody was in a mad dash to kind of get online up and running. And it's very easy to make a mistake online and you're behind your computer screen or you're behind your phone screen. And it doesn't matter because nobody saw you make the mistake live on stream. And that gave people the ability that if you weren't a part of a game and you wanted to learn it, you could either learn it through tutorials that they put on their online simulators, or you could just play and make mistakes and who cared, right?
Mhm.
Like your name was Noob Master 123 and no one knows you. And then when you learn the game and you go perform, and now you're Nathan Stoyer and you're the Magic World Champion. That's not his story, by the way.
I mean, it's almost like created just like the perfect moment for card games to skyrocket again because, like you said, all these card games created online, outlets to play the game, so everybody got more familiar with like card games being a real thing, not just something that you have to go to a card shop and play. So now that there's gonna be a lot of people being like, hey, I can do this in person now, and it's kind of the perfect opportunity to skyrocket the card games a little bit again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say too, if anybody is interested in hearing Nathan Stoyer's story, we did interview him. during episode 8, shameless plug here. Episode 8, you can go back and check that out. We did interview him there, but yeah, I don't know. I was just I kind of wanted to talk about this because I was thinking about it. Like, there's all these card games coming out this year. We just had Marble Snap launch not long ago, and talking about kind of the differences, and like you just said, Itachi, right? Like, everybody's trying to get online. So there kind of is a difference a bit between the like physical card games and the digital card games, and like the differences there, what they're trying to do. But in terms of competitive stuff, I do agree with what you were saying, Kraken, that I think a lot of competitive people are really they're just chomping at the bit at this point, honestly. Like, they're like, I'm tired of playing online. Just like, get me into a LAN, get me back there.
Yeah.
People are ready to play or feel like they can show off their skills, and even just play with groups and play with friends again too, because some of those card games, like especially the physical ones, if you're like me and you live somewhere that's totally like not really close to anywhere else, so you don't have people that you can actually just like call up automatically and be like, hey, let's talk, or let's play, let's run some games. It's really been hard to do that. But I think as things start getting a little bit more open for players, things like that, more LAN events start coming back, you're gonna have that desire from a lot more players to go and attend these events, which will also, I think, ultimately lead to that desire, that itch to actually buy product, buy the merchandise, buy the packs for a lot of those games as well. So I think ultimately that will be a good call, and I'm surprised, or not surprised really, that we are seeing a lot of these announcements starting up now. And like, I know we've mentioned it a couple of times on this show, but both Flesh and Blood and the Battle Spirits Saga, which again is launching in the spring, but both of those have already like preemptively said that they have minimum $1 million prize pools for competitive for this year. Yeah, like, they're serious about it. This is not just like oh, just let your kids go play card games while all the adults chat. Like, these are like serious things. Like, they are incredibly invested in these in these competitive scenes.
And you have to imagine the Disney game is going to have some money involved, because, I mean, their article they posted when they announced the game was very like, we are trying to take the card game scene by storm. I mean, they called out all the big card games and was like, we're going to challenge y'all, Yeah, so you have to imagine they're going to have a big prize pool.
Probably, yeah. Well, I guess for me, the challenge is, after we've had these last couple of years where a lot of these games did kind of go online, or maybe some of the card games may have felt like they could kind of slide through with online competition or very few in-person competitions and just make them bigger events. Do you think that that's going to create a challenge for some of these card games, where it's like, now how are they going to break out of that habit? Like, do they go back to doing in-person events every couple of weeks or once a month, or is that going to be too much for people? Like, are they going to stick with fewer events throughout the year?
Interesting. I think that there's two different audience. I think that there is definitely the contrasted audiences for that, where there's an audience that's like waiting and wanting to travel and like has the means, or there's like teams that are waiting to sponsor people, or there's those players. And then there are the players who are like, and I think it's kind of the crowd that you had before, where there were the players who were going to travel to every event, and then there were the players who were going to travel to like whatever was close. Like, if it was him within like 7 or 8 hours, they would go, or some people less. But I think you have to present the opportunity, and I think for a year at least, you have to kind of take some L's. Like, you have to take some L's if the turnout is not what you thought it would be. But you still have to create the atmosphere. You have to create the environment. You have to put it in the right cities. You have to put the right advertisement behind it, just like before, because like I think people are itching to get back to that level of competitiveness. Now, for a game like Hearthstone, I don't see anything aside from like maybe playoffs and world championship level events going back to LAN. I cannot see a Masters Tour going to LAN again. I don't know if there's a reason to gatekeep someone who cannot travel to an event where there is no guaranteed prize pool. That's kind of tough. But I mean, I travel to Yu-Gi-Oh events or Magic events that have no guaranteed prize pool either. And it's almost like the motivation for doing well was recouping the cost of the trip, so that like you basically got the free trip, you got to play, and then like, you're not out of pocket, $1,000 or more from taking a trip. So like that, I know that was a lot of the times my secondary motivation, aside from just like doing what I love to do. It was just like, all right, well, I need to win this prizing so that like I can sell it and be okay.
You try to cut corners on the trip. So like, okay, what Motel 6 are we staying at? What times are we eating at Waffle House?
Yo, let me tell you, Columbus Nationals 2012 Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it was 2012. We stayed in the worst area of Columbus, Ohio. It was horrible. There were like 6 of us in a room that was fit for 1. There was a guy sleeping in the tub. There was like
we had people sleep on the floors. Like
a storm came through and like the ceiling was leaking and someone was sleeping on the floor and they had to like get up. It was that event was terrible. There were 5 of us in a car that reasonably should have sat 4.
Yeah, we had so many. I can't tell you how many tournaments we had. We saved money just by staying in the most like sketchiest places, and like who sat where in the car, or who got to sit on the floor was determined by like how well you did day 1 in tournaments, or like so like it's I mean lots of like on the floor, so we would just pack pillows and mats, like little like just thick blankets and stuff. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, at DreamHack Anaheim, me and Flame Killer got the beds because we were the only 2 that topped.
Yeah.
We were like, we deserve the bed. And then we go to this steakhouse. We go to this steakhouse afterwards, and me and Flame Killer, because we have prize money, obviously. Well, we didn't get it at that event, but like we won and prized. We get these like massive steaks. We're just like gorging on these huge $100 steaks.
We would just always eat like extremely not a lot of food, and then on the last day before we're about to leave to go back home, end up eating at like a fancy buffet or something, just like eating as much as we could because we were starving. Because you couldn't buy anything at the convention centers because like drinks are $6 a piece and hot dogs are $10 a piece, and
for sure.
Just so
okay. So I'm a foodie. I love food. So my trip is planned around what are the cool places that I go look at the Food Network. Where have they been?
Same. Guy Fieri, where he been?
Who's been here? And where are the hot spots? Like I need to know. And then, so that's like a part of creating the events, right? Where are you creating these events? Because like if we're gonna go to Philly, there's so much food I want to eat. Like if we're gonna go to like Cincinnati or like Cleveland, I don't want to go to Cleveland. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to Mississippi. There's nothing there. So that plays a big role for me. And I will say, all right, this isn't a lightning round yet. We're almost there. But like, quick question. What are your top, you've traveled like a fair amount, I assume, because you played professionally. Yeah. So like, what are your top 5 cities that you've been to play like in events?
The best city I ever played Magic tournament in was Charleston, North Carolina. Is it South or North? I don't remember. Charleston. Charleston. Orlando was pretty good. I liked Orlando. Nashville was pretty nice. Nashville's a very fun place to be. Sure. Atlanta, I don't know. Atlanta's lower down my list because I went there so often, but it's not bad. Those were always pretty easy trips just because I went there a lot. And then, like you said, Cleveland. I did. Cleveland is not high on my list. I did not enjoy that event. So
no.
Oh, Indianapolis was good. Indianapolis was very, very good. That's my 5th. Sorry,
Indy's cool because in North Market.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Indy was cool.
So my top 5 are Vegas. Ooh. Definitely number 1. Oddly enough, Nashville's probably number 2 because we went to Nashville a few times and we went to the same club. And quick story. In this club, it's me, my best friend. We are both like dancers. We love to dance. We're dancers. We go to clubs. We'd always go out. Like he lived in Chattanooga and I lived in Alabama. And I would drive up there to go to the club because that's how just like what we did. We play Yu-Gi-Oh! Saturday morning and then go to the club Saturday night. And so we are doing our thing in this club called Club Seed. And this guy is with us. He's like this like scrawny white kid. He's in like ROTC/military. I think he was in National Guard actually at the time. And he's like buzz cut. Like he's a very, if you look at him in the club, you go, he's gonna buy, 4 drinks. He's gonna watch people dance, and then he's gonna go home. So we had this kid out on the middle of the floor, flailing about dancing. And for some reason, the guy that was the DJ played the opening to The Lion King. Oh no. The like Circle of Life opening, that thing. And we decided it was going to be a good idea to take this young white child, and I say child, but he's like 20. He's like 21, 22 at the time. But he was shorter than both of us. Me and my friend are both like, I'm 6'2", and he's like 6'3". And the guy that we're with is like 5'8". And so we take him and lift him up above everyone that is in the club while the Circle of Life is playing on the Lion King. So we've got this guy hoisted in the air. The entire club is looking at us like, what is happening? And we're just like twirling him around like he's Simba. And then the security guards come over there like, y'all gotta leave. And we're like, what? We're the center of attention here. And so
Nashville, which I'm not trying to extend it anymore, but yeah, Nashville was one of my favorites too. That was my one pro tour that I got to go to, was in Nashville. And I was like, finally, I qualified for multiple pro tours, but like they were all like in Japan or something. And my parents were like, "You're not going to Japan by yourself," and I'm like, "Okay."
But yeah, definitely Vegas, definitely Nashville. Long Beach, California is cool. Philly's cool. Indianapolis is actually pretty cool, I will say. Yeah. Atlanta's cool, but I stayed like really close to Atlanta, so I was there all the time.
Yeah.
But Atlanta is also very cool. So those are my. Dawn, do you have a top 5?
I mean, I haven't traveled a ton, especially for in-person tournaments. The only places I've been for these would be, I guess like I grew up in Denver, so I guess if you count that, I would not recommend there.
Denver's cool. What are you talking about?
It's all right. I grew up there, so I guess I have like a different view of it. I'm like, eh. I liked going to Anaheim. We did go once for BlizzCon way back in 2011.
Oh yeah.
So that was super cool. And then because it was actually at the same convention center, and then we went for that DreamHack Anaheim again at the Anaheim, convention center. So same place. That was pretty cool for me. And then the other place that we've gone was Atlanta. Was for a DreamHack as well. That was actually the very last Hearthstone tournament that was like in person. That was kind of big because they were still doing like the HCT points and stuff for that tournament. So there was like 200 or 205 people signed up for that. So, relatively a big tournament compared to like Hearthstone now, especially for DreamHack. Kind of sad, pathetic little numbers there, but yeah.
Sheesh.
You laugh because you know. Sad numbers. So hopefully that can like come back again. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting to kind of look at just the new card games coming into the scene and kind of announcing like, even maybe older games kind of resurging, their competitive scene. Like I said, brand new game and coming out with that $1 million prize pool with Battle Spirits Saga. I just like that blew my mind. It was like, wow, like that's intense.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be looking up this game after this. I've never heard of it, but I'll look it up.
Yeah. Well, so it's coming out in March. They're also doing a whole bunch they're doing like daily card reveals on their Twitter page, like through the 1st of February. so that everyone will know like all of the cards that are coming like a whole month before it actually comes out to prepare for stuff. I'm like, oh dang. It's like
Can
there's
I,
people who are already like making proxies and like printing out the revealed cards and like making, yeah, I'm like, wow.
do we know how to play the game? Are they revealing cards that we don't know what to do with?
They have rule sets and all that kind of stuff
Oh,
on the
okay.
website.
Good.
Yeah,
Oh, do
so
they? Okay, okay.
yeah, it's all posted and
Oh
stuff and
yeah.
everything.
Oh,
But
that looks cool. Is it good? I don't know.
yeah,
No
we don't
idea.
know how to play. Yeah, so it just, I don't know. I think it's so interesting this kind of time frame that we're in right now, where there are what seems to be so many new card games popping up, both physical and digital, and card games that are, I mean, Battle Spirits Saga literally says like on their website and stuff that it is intended to be like a competitive game. Like they literally made it that way, as opposed to some other games where I think they have like the play focused first. I think
Mhm.
even Hearthstone started that way, right? Where it was just meant to be like a fun card game, and then the esports kind of grew out of that. So I'm really curious to kind of see where it all lands with it being a competitive focused card game first, and
Mhm.
just kind of in this whole competitive and new card game scene that we have kind of going on. I think this is going to be a really important year. I'm not going to say a big year, but I think an important year for
For
card
sure.
games, just to kind of see how it all actually unfolds. And there's a lot of attention, I would say, on card games right now. And we talked a bit earlier about like cost of things, cost of bundles, cost of things, the amount of times that some of these companies are releasing, or how often some of these companies are releasing new expansions or product. So I think this is going to be a really important year.
Yep. Hard agree.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Ready for
Well,
some lightning round questions?
Oof.
yeah. All right. Welcome to the lightning round. The lightning round is the questions for guests. They're on the show notes if you want to check them out. They're just some quick gut reaction questions. I'm just going to ask one, then she's going to ask one, and then I'm going to ask one, then she's going to ask one. And you're just going to answer them really, really quickly. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Cool. If you were a card from any of the card games you've ever played, which one would you be?
Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
That's random. What? Go.
All right. Next up, what is your favorite type or archetype of deck to play?
Ramp / big mana, I guess, is what I would say.
Ew, gross. Helmet. What's one goal that you have for yourself in the card game sphere?
Well, as a computer engineer or soon to be one and a card game lover, I would love to be part of a design team of a card game. I really would.
For sure.
Love that answer. All right. Last question that we have written down. Do you prefer physical or digital cards?
Physical 100%, 10 out of 10 days a week. Like I want to shuffle cards in my hand. I want to flick them in my hand, and I want to be able to touch the cards. Yeah, I just need it. When you first asked me to go, and that's a lightning round, but when you first asked me to come on the show, I was like, can we do next week? Because I got to play F&M for the first time in 6 months. I need to go touch some physical cards.
You know what? We're actually moving our recording day to Thursday so that I can go play on Friday.
Yeah. So we will be doing that starting in February. You know what? I think that we should coin that as the like card gamers. You know this whole like new trend of people saying go touch grass. Like I think us as card gamers should be like, nah, go touch cards. Go touch cards. Like that should be our our new saying.
Go sleep up.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to. You gotta get them sleeves. Gotta flip them cards.
Gotta get some card flipping on.
Do you have any? Do you have any like bonus questions, Itachi?
Yeah. So, what is your favorite? You've got some tops for Magic for sure. What is your favorite like achievement? It doesn't even have to be a top. It could be a top, but like a favorite achievement in any card game.
I guess most of them come from Magic. I mean, I have hit rank 1 in Hearthstone one time, but it was like a long time ago. But Magic would probably be qualifying for a Pro Tour. That moment was really big. I didn't do very well at the Pro Tour, but it took me 4 years of watching, 4 Pro Tours a year. I'm going to make it to that. It's either that or I top 16 at a Star City Games Invitational one time, and I don't know if y'all know what the Invitational used to be.
Yeah.
The Invitational used to be like they used to have half the tournament one format and half the tournament the other format, and you would spend the first 4 rounds playing Standard, then Modern, then Standard, then Modern, and I got like 12th place by going 14-2. I barely missed like top 8 you had to only lose one to make top 8, and but I was very proud of myself. I really was. I went undefeated in Standard and lost 2 matches to Infect, I think. But yeah, it was that. It was basically the Pro Tour, the Invitational. Those were really highlights of my card playing things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super dope. I have a highlight, and it was winning a tournament with a scuffed winning a tournament with a scuffed deck is the most hilarious and like testing thing that you can do. So there's two instances of this that I recall in my memory. There's a guy named Andres Torres. He's a really good Yu-Gi-Oh player. Mm-hmm. He played a deck, and then he gets to the top 8 or top 32, and they deck check at the top 32. Like, that's the cutoff. So like they deck check you again to make sure you didn't try to change anything between days, and then you proceed. Well, when they check his deck list, they realize he did not write down a very important card, like the pivotal card of the deck. He did not write it down. So throughout the top 32, he could not play that card. Most important card of the deck by far. He wins the event. That's insane. And so when I played the Black Claws, which was like the playoffs qualifier tournament, you had to win that tournament, and then you had to top 4 another tournament after you win that one. It's like an invitational thing, and then you get to playoffs or whatever. I submitted an even lock deck that I built like myself. But I built it like from memory, because like I had played the deck so much. I was just like, oh, it needs this and this. And when I got to the end, I forgot to put all the healing cards in. So like Lesser Amethyst Spellstone and like everything that healed you, I forgot to put it in the deck. And so I was like, okay, all gas, no brakes. We just gonna go ahead. I didn't trade a single time. I was just like, I can't afford to trade because they got to trade, because if they hit my face, then I can't heal. And so I won the tournament with a scuffed even lock with no heal, and that was like super cool.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I have so many stories to probably tell. I'm not going to waste the podcast with them, but I'll tell you, I got so many stories to tell you later. There's so many funny stories. Like,
no, tell me one. What are you doing?
Well, you mentioned like the whole like card replacement one. This one's not even that funny, but it is kind of crazy. It was they did regionals, right? In Magic, where you'd have regionals like once every cycle or whatever it was. And I was like first place in regionals, like 9-0, and they deck checked. And they determined that the four of the cards in my deck were too curved from foil. And the thing is that like it caused a whole like conspiracy theory, because like he was like holding the deck upwards, like cards facing upwards, and like shuffling. It's like, see, we can see your cards are foiled and or the curve, so we can see you're probably like cheating, right? And I'm like, no. I was like, but Judge, like, you don't ever play a card game with your deck facing up. I was like, can you turn the deck upside down, shuffle it, and show me where the cards are? And he like, the card's right here. And he like, it wasn't the card, and he like couldn't figure it out. He couldn't prove what he was claiming, but he wasted like 45 minutes of the round doing this to me. Basically, he was saying I was going to have to like buy like $100 and something worth of cards to replace it, or I would just replace it with basic lands. And no lie, like my whole group ended up getting like almost like disqualified from the tournament, because they were just like they all quit the tournament trying to find the cards and all that kind of stuff. And but I ended up still making top 8 with like 6 not cards in my deck, I guess. But it became such a conspiracy theory because the guy that got deck checked on rode with the judges to the event. And it was like became such a conspiracy theory in that shop. I just like never went back. It was in like Wasteland Gaming and everything, in Atlanta, I think. But yeah, that's not a funny one, but that was just a wild story. I don't know.
That's crazy though.
That reminded me.
I hate stories. Yeah. I love stories like that. 'Cause I like to hear them, but I hate being a part of them because it makes you feel like it's so.
Oh, it was a frustrating time. Yeah. Don't use foils anymore.
I'll play commons. They do the same thing.
Yeah.
Less expensive too.
Yeah.
So tell us where we can follow you and find you.
I'm just gonna pull. I think y'all have it, but on here. So I do stream 3 times a week Pokemon these days. Maybe I'll throw in some Hearthstone eventually, but I do stream on Twitch at FlyingKraken HS. I still have the Hearthstone in my name, but not really sure if that's ever going to change or not. I don't know if there's a process to get that changed, but and then on Twitter, I tweet pretty daily, not daily or every other day about Pokemon or Hearthstone at Kraken Flying on Twitter. I try to stay involved with the Hearthstone community, even though I don't really stream it anymore and all that.
What do you stream when you play Pokemon? Do you stream gameplay or do you stream like battles?
So I do stream like battles, like actual just online ranked matches like Master Ball League and stuff like that. And then like I try to maybe one day out of the week do like Nuzlocks and stuff. Do just like challenging stuff and all that, like all the ROM hacks and other games like that. Gotcha. And then when my league starts, coming up season 3 of my league in February, will be one of those days will be replaced with the matches that happen that week and stuff like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to that. So everybody go check out Kraken over on his channels. And if you pop in his stream, like say that you found him on the show, that would be awesome. And chat with him about some of his card game experiences. But thank you so much for joining us this week, Kraken. It was great to hear a lot of your stories and history. That was really cool.
I'm about to binge every episode of this show this week. I honestly didn't even know there was this. Like, I didn't even know you did a podcast, honestly, until you invited me. I was like, wait, she does a podcast? And I was like, oh, I need to like listen to all y'all's podcasts. Like,
she does too.
Wow.
She's a fiend.
Hey, I'll have to listen to it on my walks around campus and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Like, really, it was awesome to talk about this. And I don't know, like, I don't know if anybody else feels like it, but after that conversation, I'm kind of pumped to like try to do some land tournaments, like both of y'all's experience and talking about the different cities. I'm like, well, I want to do this. Like, I want to be a part of this stuff now. Like, I feel like a potato. All I do was
like drawing hands. Like, what am I gonna?
Oh my goodness! My professor said that this week. He's like, I feel like a potato.
Well, I don't know your professor, but
I know.
Great. Oh, that's all right. I'll go to an event and be a potato at an event. Be like, I don't know what I'm doing with these cards. Like, I need to see. This is how we should close out the show. I need to go touch cards. That's what it is.
Go touch cards, dog.
Go touch
cards, bro.
That's right. Well, thank you again, Kraken, for joining us, and thank you everyone who tuned in, checked this out. Thank you for joining us this week. If you or someone that you know would like to join the show, or you want to have somebody special on, like that you would love to hear us interview, reach out to us. Let us know. Email us at TCCG Roundtable at protonmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, TCCG Roundtable. There as well, you can find our top pinned tweet to follow, join in our Discord, jump in some conversation there. And you can also check out the video version of the show over on my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/dragonrider_TCCG. And of course, everywhere that you can find audio podcasts. And we also have that sweet Inked Gaming affiliate link that you can check out in the description or the show notes as well. Get yourself some sweet play mats, dice bags, all that kind of stuff, and help directly support us as well. And you can find Itachi and I individually, Itachi on twitter.com/Itachi_HS. And you can find me at Twitter at DonnieDK, DAWNIEDK. And that is it for this week. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you at the Roundtable.
And roll tide.
That War Eagle. Oh. So you know what Yu-Gi-Oh deck I play?